Good evening and welcome to Dog Talk. I'm Dan Camilleri.
And I'm Laura McKillop. We'd like to start by thanking Enduro for their ongoing support in bringing you our fortnightly Q&A. Tonight, we're fortunate enough to be speaking with Tony Jackson from Jackson's Working Dogs and the current Queensland Working Sheepdog Association president.
Tony will be picking who he thinks has asked the best question of the night, and they'll win the bag of Enduro high-energy food for working dogs with real kangaroo meat.
Hey, Jacko, how you going?
Well, thanks, Laura. Well, how are you, Dan?
Good, thanks, mate. What kept you busy today?
Oh, Dan, we've had a bit on up here like everybody on the East Coast. We're pretty dry. Still got a big body of feed, but we're feeding a lot of dry lick to stock now and just keeping up with water. So it's just a matter of keeping in front of everything and keeping everything there and waiting for the first storm.
Yeah, good. How far north are you, mate?
Dan, we're 160k south of Longreach. Anybody that knows this country, heading back south towards Windora, Birdsville way, back down that way there. We're 160k south, a little town that we joined the common of, a little town called Stonehenge. It's only about 25 people and it's 165k south of town, yeah.
And you've got a bit of history in Stonehenge.
Oh, well, we owned the pub there for a little while. We were there for 5 years. It was a fun business and a fun job. Met a lot of really good people there, and it was great. I'm sort of probably part of my life that's behind me now, and I wouldn't do it again. But you know, if somebody said you could have your time over again, would you buy the Stonehenge Hotel? I'd say yeah. It was a good fun job for 5 years.
Yeah. How much of the 5 years do you remember?
Well, fortunately, I had some managers in there, so they kept it up pretty well, you know. But no, it's a great little business, and the two boys that took it on from me, they've done a great job there too, keeping the doors open. I mean, little towns like that, as we all know, the hotel's an integral part of the community, and it's a meeting place for everybody, and anything that on focuses around the hotel. So it's great to see the door still open.
What made you ever take it on?
Well, we're a bit spoilt there. A lady and her husband owned the pub for 35 years, and we just came and went as we liked, and the doors are always open. And if no one was there, you just put the money on the bar, wrote a note, and took what you needed and went home, you know. But so they sold to some other people, and they probably lost interest after a couple of years, and the doors were shut more times than they were open. And of course, as I said, the little pub focuses around that. So the opportunity came to buy it, so I did, and had a series of managers in there, and yeah, it was a fun job.
I reckon, other than a hairdresser, they know everybody else's business too.
He knows everyone's business anyway.
Well, you do hear a few stories, Dan.
That's awesome, mate. For the people that don't know you, Jacko, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, mate? Where you grew up, what you do?
Probably started out originally around Goondiwindi. Left there when I was 7. We went to Gold Coast, and left there when I was 17. Came up to Longreach as a jackaroo, and worked on a few places around Longreach here, and ended up overseer on a place 100 k's west of Longreach out towards Winton, and left there and bought a few sheep with a mate of mine, and we went on the road droving them, and ended up buying and selling about 35,000 sheep in 18 months, and had a good run with it. It was back in 88 when the sheep and the wool job were going pretty good, and opportunity was such that it was a little bit dry in this country and plenty of feed down the south, so we were able to buy sheep and take them down there and put some condition on and get rid of them. And so ended up making a little bit of money of that, and bought a block at Stonehenge, my original block, Hillview Park. It's 65,000 acres, big rough block, all mountain range, sort of mulga country, pretty hard. Sheep to 10 acres sort of stuff, and not a ewe either, a wether. We used to shear about 6,000 wethers there, and so started off there, and then went in partnership with another mate of mine. I went into a landmarking and mulesing business, and he gave it away after a few years. He had a family and was a lot of travel involved with it. So I took that on my own, ended up being a landmarking and mulesing contractor for 23 years, ended up mulesing about 3.5 million lambs up in this country. So that was a good business to me. Met a lot of really good people, you know, knew all the graziers around and some great people around, and it was a great job. And then just towards the end, last 10 years, I bought a portable crutching trailer. They sort of came in about 2000, and so we were sort of marking 150,000 lambs a year and crutching 300,000 sheep a year. So it was a great business. And then along the way, I bought another place out the back of me in 1997. I bought another one in 2000, and that's all around that Stonehenge country there. And then in 2011, over towards Isisford, which is to the east of Stonehenge, but more towards Blackall way, bought a block over there. And then in 2019, we bought the neighbouring block there too. So we've sort of got 70,000 acres over here at Isisford, and 125 back there at Hillview Park. So
Yeah,
that's
it is, mate.
we run about 20-odd thousand sheep. We've got about 21,000 on at the moment, and we've got about 1,800 head of cattle.
Yeah, right. And running merinos?
100% merinos, Dan. Yeah, I started with merinos. I love them. I love the industry. I'm not saying, they're the best money or anything, but I love them. And been in them all the time. They tried to break everyone through the 90s, didn't they? There was no money in sheep back in the 90s, and there's not a lot in them today. I see little Weena Weathers making $9 and $10 a day. So there's not a fortune in them at the moment, but the job will turn around. We only need some rain on the East Coast, and we'll see where the new market starts. I mean, the $200 is gone, but we'll see where the new market is when things sort themselves out. So, yeah, I love the wool. I just love the whole industry as such. So I haven't got many years left in me, Dan, so it'll see me out.
Ever do any auctioneering?
No, Dan.
You're like an awesome auctioneer. Jeez, man, I'm staying with you, but I reckon you'd make an awesome auctioneer, mate. You'd haggle someone into it.
Do a bit of commentating, did a bit of polocross commentating at the Nationals and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Beautiful. And what you said, how much like you love the merinos, mate. Why the merino? Like, up there, I'm predicting like Dorpers would be much easier for you to look after, a little bit less maintenance, probably a little bit more getting out and doing a bit more social stuff. But you're dedicated to put your time in your merinos, mate. Why is that the case?
Well, when I first came up here, Dan, in the early 80s, there was no such thing as Dorpers or the shedding breeds. It was 100% merinos, and Longreach, Blackall, Barcaldine, and all this country up here was a massive merino industry. Yep. The whole Jackaroo system and everything was thriving in those days, and overseers and all that sort of stuff. So it was the industry I came into, and it's been good to me over the years. So yeah, I've got no reason to change. But sure, there's a lot of people made the change up here now, and there's a lot of the exotic type sheep getting around. The meat breeds. The other thing that's moved into this country here, because what's also changed here over the time is the movement in of the wild dogs. So it's got that way in this country now. Unless you are behind a fence, a 1.5 metre exclusion fence, you can't run small hoof animals. The dogs will pay too much havoc to you. So since sort of about 2015, we've all been putting up fences, and so with the advent of the fences, of course, and they're 1.5 metres high with a 30 centimetre apron on the ground, and so what they've done is allowed people to diversify. So if you haven't got the merino infrastructure, as you need shearing sheds and everything else. So if you haven't got that infrastructure, it allows you to go into the meat type sheep, or the other big one that people have gone into in a big way up here are the goats, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. I know traveling north recently myself, coming over those the cattle grids there in the other place on the boundaries, the bloody sirens for the dogs going off their head. Like, I remember the first one, I was like, who's making that noise in the back? What just happened to the car? And he just goes, no, you'd hear them, but I never actually heard those sirens before as you go through the fences.
Yeah. Well, we all put them on the grids, and we all thought they were a great idea. Well, they work for a little while till everything gets used to them, and then they just walk up and jump over the grid while the siren's blaring in their ear. But certainly they do have a little bit of an impact, and they do stop some of them coming over. And when you're on a main road, you haven't got much alternative. I mean, on our boundary up here, different class of road, but it's a less used road. We're allowed to put a self-opening electric gate on it. So when you drive up to the gate, it triggers a sensor, and the gate slowly opens, and then when you go through, the gate slowly stops. Slowly closes. So that allows 100% effectiveness then.
And being up there, I understand that some of the oldest merino studs in the country are up around that area as well.
Then they might have been in the early days, mate, but they're fallen away now. Through the 90s and that, there was a lot of merino studs up in this country up here, but they all sort of dissipated through the 90s. That wool job was pretty crook there through the 90s. In 1992, they were paying us $2 a head to shoot our sheep. There was that many around, and there was that much wool in the stockpile. Wool's making $350, $400 a bale. There was no joy in that for a long time. And, interest rates were high, and the job was pretty tight back in those days. But and a lot of the Queensland merino studs, and New South Wales ones for that matter, have all fallen by the wayside in the last 30 years. But there's still some very good studs here in Queensland, down in that Roma country and St George, and down in that country there, still plenty of good sheep down there.
Yeah, beautiful. And you mentioned your cattle, mate. Is your heart with your sheep or your cattle, or yeah?
Oh, no. Well, I'm 100%. I'm a sheep man, mate. I mean, we got 1,800 head of cattle, and And the reason we run them there in Hillview Park now is because the dogs ate us out of sheep. So we chose not to fence Hillview Park because if you're not going up, you're going down. So it's very rugged, that country there, and a lot of gullies, and a lot of the actual maintenance on the fence would be massive. So I chose not to fence that country there, and we fenced over here at Isisford. So we've got our 20-odd thousand sheep over here, and we just run the cattle back there at Hillview Park. Yeah. But Dan, if I could, I wouldn't own a beast. I'd have all sheep. But, it's good to have a mix too from an economic point of view. And I don't mind going mustering. I mean, it's all helicopter, that country over there. We mustered now on the 23rd of November. I've got a couple of helicopters booked for Saturday, Sunday, and we'll get all those sheep together. We'll put that 120,000 acres together in a couple of days. So, that's revolutionised it as well. In the early days, you're out there mustering and trapping off dams and doing all those sort of things, and it'd take you 3 months to put them all in the yard. But now, by lunchtime the second day, they're all in.
Still trapping off dams or just air mustering?
100% air now, Dan. I don't even do this anymore. I've got a bit lazy, but if we missed a few, you were able to shut the dam and then get those ones that you'd missed and take them to the yards and process them. But nowadays you just sort of muster, and what you get's what you get. We get most of them. I don't say we get them all out of that country there. If we muster next week, and there'll be 50 or 60 left behind there somewhere, that just pull up in the Mulga Creek or something like that, and they pull up in the shade and they don't walk on. Those cattle are reasonably quiet. I mean, they're bush cattle, but they're reasonably quiet. So you start them up and they walk a little way. It's all stony ground, so they don't get galloping along or anything. They just get on a pad and follow their nose, and so they come in, they pull up in the Mulga there somewhere, and stand in the shade. People fly over the top of them. We ride past them, and they're still there for tomorrow.
Cows and calves?
100% cows and calves. I mean, that country's pretty tough, so we pull our weaners off at sort of 150 to 250, somewhere in there. Smaller the better, and that gives the cow the opportunity. Hey,
easier to handle.
Oh, well, just get them off then, mate. The quicker you get them off the cow, the quicker the cow will recover in that hard country down there. And so we sell a little weaner steer straight off to sale. Generally go to Blackall sale with those. And coming off that tough country there, anybody who buys them, they sort of go pretty well on a bit better quality country. They pick up pretty quick,
So are you breaking in your own weaners, or are you contracting that out?
So no.
So having all air mustering, how are you finding, does that alter your weaner breaking program at all?
No, not at all, Dan. I mean, it's like, you hear the old stories 30 years ago, people taught horses versus motorbikes, it's all in direct correlation with the people hanging on the reins or the people hanging onto the throttle, for me. So, a bit like a strong dog or a weak dog, a dog with a lot of presence got to work for a long way away. A dog that hasn't got much presence can get in pretty close, so it's much the same when you're working your stock, isn't it? So, no difference at all, mate. We bring, 300 weaners over here and feed them in the yards for a couple of days and open the gate and let them out and put a couple of dogs around the front of them, and we don't have any trouble. You might have a couple want to jump away or something like that, but nothing that the dogs can't turn back. And these dogs aren't strong. I mean, they're sheep dogs. But if they get in front of them, they'll annoy them enough to bring them back. So if you want dogs to pull the nose out of something and pull them down, these aren't the ones for that. But just working, good quiet cattle, they're good.
You're a bit of a horseman too.
Oh well, Laura, those days are nearly behind me. But I had a lot of fun with horses over the years. Yeah, follow them a fair bit and try and stay involved a little bit. But find it hard to swing a leg over one at the moment.
Do you find much correlation between the two?
Definitely, Laura. I say to people, training horse and training dogs is much the same. About the only difference is when you ride a horse, you got a leg either side and a rein in each hand. When you're training a dog, you got to have them right in the mind, or else you got nothing. So, but still, the basics are all the same. Pressure release and all that sort of stuff make the good things easy, bad things hard. So, if you can train a horse, make no mistake, you can train a dog. And we're seeing that. Look at Robbie Hodgman coming through now. I mean, one of the best cutting horse trainers in Australia now. And now the man's got keen on dogs, and he's just sorting himself out there now, putting a few dogs together, and he's committed to the sport. And we'll see him come through somewhere.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the Gold Coast earlier. So, what age were you when you were at the Gold Coast? Sorry,
7.
So then, where did the passion? And you were there till you said 17.
Yeah.
So where did the passion for the livestock and the horses, not a lot of horses and working dogs on the Gold Coast, right?
No.
We got fair hair, so I'm assuming there might have been a surfboard involved somewhere there.
No.
That's some waves more than cattle.
Must be the shade of light, mate. That's all grey. Don't worry about the fair. She's long gone. But, mate, I had a grandfather and uncle that were on country out there at Gundawindi, so spent a lot of school holidays out there, and they were both keen sheepmen, so that's probably what got me started, mate.
And how about dogs? That all come as part of the job jackarooing or later down the track?
So we're always keen on dogs, but started out as a jackaroo. I mean, I went up there as a first-year jackaroo on $70 a week for 6 days a week, but and thought we were well paid. But the first dog, there was 30,000 sheep on that first place I went to there, and they had about 4,000 cows. It was all horse work back in those days, and bought a dog off a bloke for $30. It was 15 months old, and went around in front of him and turned him around and brought him back to me, and came back occasionally when you called. So, I thought I had something special and worked him. And because that's the other thing that's happened in this country up here with the advent of the dogs moving in and everything else. I mean, we all 1080 bait heavily up here, to keep the dogs in check. I mean, here we are talking dogs today, and I've been putting out 200 kilos of 1080 bait today to try and keep the dogs at bay, But the so, we're mustering the horses in those days and 1080 bait. And so someone said, what you do with, you put a muzzle on, you put a bit of gauze over the muzzle and you lace the gauze to the muzzle. So I thought, that's a good idea. So I did that. But, poor old dog only went about 8 or 10 Ks and, got hot because I couldn't get enough air into him, and I was too inexperienced. And he was okay, but he was broken-winded after that, so he wasn't much good. And, I just kept on going with dogs from there. Probably the first dog I trialled, I joined the Queensland Association in 1985. And first dog I tried was we all started with Kelpies, of course. If you're doing station work, Kelpies are probably, a more generally accepted and probably easier dog to get on with than the Border Collie if you want to do station work, but the sheep work. But so I started was out of an Elfinvale bitch back in the 80s there when Tim Austin was flying high with the Elfinvales. They were tremendous dogs. And a bloke up here had bought an Elfinvale bitch and joined it to a dog, pretty handy old dog, and so I ended up with one of those, and that was the first one I trialled in Longreach here, and in the novice. And Tony Thomas was the judge. Anybody who's been around dog trials for a fair while, Tony Thomas was a Tambo, and he had a stud called Border View. You don't see it in the pedigrees too much now; it's back too far. But Tony Thomas was a prolific breeder of dogs. He went to the National at Canberra, which was the trial. There was no Supreme back in those days. So he went to the National back there in 1985. Bought a dog called Blue Bush Laddie for $3,000, which was massive money back then. It was a dog that Jeff Jolly won the National Maiden. He won the National Open with on the same trial. And Tony Thomas bought that dog, and he brought it back to Tambo here. And in 1986, unfortunately, there was a passing of Don Smith. Don Smith was a very, very well respected member of the Queensland Association, and Don's the only Queensland ever to have won the National. And Don had an accident and passed away, unfortunately. So those dogs, the Barrackdale dogs, some of the better Barrackdale bitches went to Tony Thomas. He was great mates with Don. So the cross of the Blue Bush Laddie over the Barrackdale bitches produced some tremendous dogs. And of course, as most good breeders do, whether you're Richard Bull or you're Terry Hall, you put the hands of the good, or put the hands of your animals in the hands of good trainers. And so, they placed them in good hands, and the Border View dogs were very, very strong in trialling. But you got to remember back then too, the road up to Longreach here was dirt. There's a lot of dirt sections on the road, and people couldn't get away from work, and we're all driving two-wheel motor cars, and all that sort of stuff. So the actual ability is everybody now. As I said, I just went to South Australia the other day, and I turned around and came home in a day and a half, So the world's changed for that sort of thing, and people are a lot more mobile now for dog trials than they were in those days. But certainly back there in the 80s and into the 90s, the Border View dogs were prolific here in Queensland for winning trials. I mean, a dog you see in the pedigrees way back, a dog called Border View Bob. He was the sire of a dog called Doonan's Pine Gap that Barry Doonan had. His nickname was White Dog. And Barry called him Pine Gap because in those days, you remember Pine Gap was the sort of nuclear sort of centre down there in South Australia. It was all a little bit secretive and everything else. And this white pup turned up out of Roma Pebbles. And that was Doonan's Pine Gap, because he was a bit of a, unknown as to why the white one came through. So that's why I call him Pine Gap, and he called him White Dog. And he went on and won a lot of trials here. Obviously, there wasn't a competition back then that there is now in respect for numbers, but certainly the people that were getting around in the trials there, you had Doonan and you had Percival, two of the leading trialists in Queensland. You had Gordon Young, a lot of those people aren't with us anymore, unfortunately, but Dooney, in our point scoring system, which is 1 for sixth and 6 for first, Dooney went round and scored 41 points in 8 trials with White Dog, so he was dominant back there in the late 80s, early 90s, and went on to represent Australia as well in the early days. But, dog trialing's changed too, everybody's a lot more mobile now, and gone are the people, here we are in Queensland with sort of 150, 60 members. And I think I worked out there one day, there's only 3 or 4 of us that actually work sheep for a living, so the whole demographics of the sport has changed over the last 40 years. When I first went into it, the only people that were doing it, except for Toppy's a life member of Queensland and been a tremendous member, when his wife Lynn also a life member and was secretary of the association for many, many years. And Toppy and Lynn were both instrumental in getting the Australia-New Zealand Test Series up and running, which we just saw completed in New Zealand the other day. But Toppy was in Brisbane there, and he was one of the few that wasn't actually an active sheep worker, working sheep for a living. The rest of us are all station people, and consequently, as I heard David Hines say on one of these things here one day, in those early days, he used to be able to go around with a 78, 85, something like that, and win sheepdog trials. But unless you're going around in 95s now, you're not in the final. Yeah. So the difference also, talking to Jeff Gibson the other day, the difference now is, the whole sheep industry's changed. Back in those days, we were always working 4 and 5 year old wethers. It was just standard. Everybody had a mob of ewes, and they had a mob of wool growing wethers to go with them. Whereas nowadays you're hard pressed to find a 4 or 5 year old wether. They've all got their heads cut off as lambs or hoggets. And they're all gone, and people are breeding more sheep. So those 4 or 5 year old wethers sort of aren't in the industry too much anymore. So we're working sort of different sort of sheep. It's all changed. It's all changed for the better. We've got a lot of people in the sport now, and a lot of really good people too. And it's going strong.
What do you think's changed, or some of the key things in driving the demographic change? With people not on property trialing as much as people from off property.
Dan, I think probably what's happened there, mate. The breakdown of the sheep industry, through the 90s when I said it was so tough, and that whole Jackaroo system sort of all busted up now. There's a few places in New South Wales still doing it, but, there's not much of that going on now. And, in those early days when you were looking for a job, the job said must have own dogs. Now you read the ad that says no dogs, so, that's sort of changed. And even here, Dan, to a certain extent, here we are sitting on 80,000 acres with 20,000 sheep. And, we've gone around here now. We haven't got any paddocks here bigger than 5,500 acres anymore. And all those paddocks open up onto a laneway. So I've got a son home here, came home here 12 or 18 months ago to give me a hand. And he gets on one side of the paddock, I get on the other side. We zigzag down in the end, and we end up with all the sheep down the end. They go on a laneway and we follow them home. So the days of mustering and back in the early days there at Hillview Park, where we had to muster hard, 29 dams there, and they were all trapped, and you had to every couple of days clean the traps out and walk them through, country white man hasn't been through before, and try and put them all together and bring them home. You needed proper dogs then, whereas nowadays, I go mustering plenty of times, and I don't even put a dog on the front of my bike. In fact, it's rare if I do.
Yeah, right.
I never go in the yards without one. Got a little Hunaway bitch here. I take a border collie over because they generally cut something off somewhere. So you need just have something backing him up. But it's all yard work here now, mate. And the reality with it is, Dan, too, with sheep up in this country here, we always seem to be doing something with sheep, but the reality is up here, say, compared to you blokes down there, we don't drench. We had a bit of fly last year because it never stopped raining, but, we hadn't seen a blowfly here for about 10 or 15 years. It's been that, the country's that dry, and so, and we, because it's a big job to put sheep together, you generally, crutch and wean or, join and do something. You generally try and do a couple of jobs together, so you're not handling sheep all the time, although it seems this year that all we've seemed to have done is handle sheep for some reason or other. We're still trying to get sheep landmarked here now.
And is that a labour issue there, or?
Oh, labour issue and lack of enthusiasm, maybe, Dan. I had to go to South Australia to watch the Supreme. I couldn't let that get.
Of course you did.
No. So there's only the two of us here, and as I said, I've done a fair bit of it. So and a little bit lucky. Cal doesn't mind catching them. We're still doing 120 an hour between us, so we get through them okay, mate. Yeah. So more lack of enthusiasm, let's say, Dan, than lack of ability.
And you mentioned the Hunaway there. Only the one in your team, and how did that come about? Because I can't imagine that would have been passed over through generations either.
No, I've had a couple of them now, mate. I when I had the crutching trailer, I started off crutching on the trailer and did a lot of crutching on the trailer, and then had trouble finding penner uppers, and so had plenty of crutches. So I migrated off the trailer back to the yards penning up, and I could pen up and keep the wool away from 3 crutches by myself. So that eliminated me needing to find another man. And so I started off with a couple of Kelpies to start with, and got a Hunaway for a bit of noise, and then just moved on from there. Cal's got all Kelpies, and they're pretty handy yard dogs. So I don't do a lot of yard work now. I mean, I'm generally on the drafting gates, or I'm generally doing something like that, and he's penning up. I just have that bitch over there because I'm too lazy to go around the big yards and bring him up these days.
So, other than trialing, why Border Collies?
Well,
I don't think I've ever heard you.
Well, I think if I wasn't trialing, I think I'd probably still have Kelpies, Laura.
Yeah.
As I say, I started with Kelpies, and had a lot of them. I had a lot of Les Tarrants from Rocky Bar way back in those days. There had half a dozen from old Les, and loved going to Hellerton, calling in to see Les. But and then when I wanted to get a bit more competitive at dog trialing, I changed over to the Border Collies, and also for that sort of work back then, Laura, mustering that Hillview Park country there in the ranges and stuff, and trapping and all stony ground and hard work to do anything in. The Border Collies were, I don't say any better in with the sheep. No, Laura, I'd say if I wasn't dog trialing, I'd just be happy to have a couple of Kelpies in the pen. I wouldn't have as many as I had if I had got dog trialing. I got, what have I got out there? 7 now. If I had a couple of one yard dog and a handy all rounder, in reality, if I wasn't keen on dogs and wasn't a dog trialer, 2 dogs, I wouldn't knock them up here. They might not.
Someone that's doing being on a trailer, your crutching business, doing so much yard work over such a period of time. Why what drew you into free sheeping? It's totally opposite to what you've experienced for such a long period of time.
Well, it is, Dan, but in saying that, in between all that time in the crutching trailer, I was trying to dig sheep out of the mulga there at Hillview Park all the time too, and here we were, mustering, there's a letter in the filing cabinet here that I told the kids they couldn't chuck out. In 1989, I applied for a stock mortgage at a stock and stations agency here in Longreach. Primac, it was a Queensland-based one, Primac in those days, and there's a hand-typed letter in the thing here approving me of a $25,000 stock mortgage at 24.5%. So when you're trying to service a 24.5% loan and you're mustering $2 sheep out of the mulga and someone's paying you $2 to shoot them, you're digging every one of them out. Every one mattered. So yeah, mate, I did a lot of mustering in the middle of all that, and also, Dan, back in those days, yard dog trialing hadn't really taken off here in Queensland. It had a bit of a burst. Kevin Halliday was one of the leading trialers back there in the 90s. Kevin was also a competitive 3-sheeper, but he's at Bollen, Kevin, and had some tremendous Kelpies and won a lot of yard dog trials. And they were pretty popular there for probably a 10-year period, and then they just died. And I'm not sure why, but they haven't taken off in Queensland since. Even Laura went up to that John Darien one the other day, which is the Queensland Championships, and a very well-run event from all reports. And, and kudos to the Queensland Yard and Utility Association for getting it off the ground. Shorter numbers and how you attract more people, I'm not sure, because as I said to you there before, and not many people are working dogs with sheep anymore,
Definitely. Question just come through from Rowan. He's
right.
asked, when can we expect you walking out with a dog on the trial ground next?
How long's a piece of string? I've got a couple of handy little bitches in the cage down here, but I've been saying that for a long time now. They're rising 4-year-old, and they're only half broke in. But I've kept up my breed all the way through. I started way back in the early days there with a dog I got off Greg, Prince of Rosedale Turbo, Wandara Dye bitch. And so I followed that line all the way through, really, that Princey line all the way through. I joined her to dog Jim O'Connell had Princess Ace, and there was a brother, Princess Toby, that Freddie Cook had that he won a lot with, and they were Clyde Fames. And, you know, I've just kept the line going all the way through. Went to, in the middle there somewhere, I went to Tungali Keith. That probably pulled the wrong rein for me, not saying Keith wasn't a good dog. He probably wasn't the dog that I was looking for. And doing all that station work I was doing with those dogs back in those days there, they need to have a bit of power and a bit of grunt, you know. And Keith put a bit of feel in them, but he took a bit of power out of my breed. I'm not talking about Keith in general. I'm saying the cross that I did with Keith probably didn't have the power I wanted. And that's a long time ago. That was back in like, you have to be early 2000s. And so we're talking 20 years ago. And I'm still suffering the consequences of that today. You know, I've been to, what else have I been? I bought a dog off Dave Lacey, bred by Richard Maguire over there in WA. A line of Grant Cook. Grant's been a tremendous competitor for Australia for a long time, and he had a big dog called Grass Valley Moss. He's not everybody's dog. He's a proper sheep dog and a proper work dog. And Grant represented Australia a lot of times with Moss, and Moss descendants been a great line to him. And so Dave Lacey from WA came over with this dog, Max Weston, that Richard had bred over there, and he was out of a bit of a Princey line bitch. And so I bought that dog off Dave as an 8-month-old dog, and joined him back to my Princey dogs to try and put a bit of power back into him. And he did that. I don't think I lost anything going to Max Weston. And of course, the dog that Paul Rose working at the moment, Jackson Silver, you know, she's been Australian Cattle Dog of the Year for a couple of years now, I think. And Paul's had a lot of success with her. And she's by Max Weston. And out of a bitch called Yandara Tide, a bitch I bought off Anne Moy. And she's all, Cole Webster, of course, who's not with us anymore, but Cole was Anne's partner. And Cole was a big proponent of the Dodge blood and the Yandaras. And so all that Dodge blood back on the dam side there, and I put Max Weston over, and it turned out a nice cross. And probably a little bit too hard for sheep. I mean, Trevor Purcell broke that dog in silver and sold it on to Paul, and Paul finished him off for cattle dog trialing. But they had a lot of work in them, too much for sheep work, a bit too much dog in them, but tremendous work dogs. Yeah. So
he's won a 3 sheep with her anyway, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has. Yeah, yep. Paul turned up at Roma there one year and won the Encourage, the novice, and had a lot of fun with her. Yeah. And she'd been working cattle a day before. So, yeah, great testament to Paul's training.
Are you still breeding a few, mate?
Only when I want one, Dan. Bred a bitch here. Took that Max Weston bitch to Wandara Snap, a dog of Mick Hudson's, and all those big dogs of Mick's are out by Snap or go back to Snap there somewhere. He was a tremendous dog to Mick. And so I was lucky enough to get a bitch joined to Snap, and I've got 2 of them in the cage out here now. And one of them I really, really like. She's lovely, soft, feely little thing, which is how I like them. She's a feather-footed little thing. I like them like that too. As Jeff Gibson said to me once, when you get all the feel and all the feather and everything else, I mean, it's hard to get the power, you know, and I'm probably just lacking a little bit of power with it too, you know, to get the whole mix, to get it all together. She looks $1 million, and sheep never get away, and she's soft on sheep and everything's right. But when you wanted to walk up and the sheep are on the top of the bridge looking down at you, I think I'll be looking for a long time, you know. So I've got to work on that and just try and build on it and try and get us through all that and see how we go. And of course, all that takes time and all that takes training, and I'm not doing either. So, but she's a nice little bitch. I've got another thing here out of MDH Stella, dog Damien Kerr bought at that big Tamworth sale down there. You know, when they were having that, they had that couple of years, that big Tamworth show, and Mick sold that bitch there. She's by O'Kane's Charles Dickens out of Perandry March, that bitch that Mick represents Australia with there at Hawkesbury. And She's a white speckled bitch. She's a nice little bitch. I like her. Probably a little bit sticky in the eye, but she's not a bad little bitch. And I've got the other snap bitch here that I like. So yeah, they're going along all right. And I bred a litter here 12 months ago. I saw a dog, Bernard McGlashan, represent Australia with, and dog called McGlashan's Crash. And he ended up back here in Queensland with Barry and Charlie Knight. And I saw him work. He's a tremendous stock dog. He was a bit hard, but he was a tremendous stock dog, actually, in cover and hold and holding sheep together. And so I'm just looking for that little bit on the strong side. You know, I've just bred a bit weak, so I'm just looking for that little bit of strength. So I put Crash over him, and I had 3 of them, and none of them are any good. So you know, I didn't do any good with them. So yeah, I really need to break in the ones I've got before I breed anymore, but I'll get carried away at one stage and see something I like and join something.
What's Jacko's unicorn look like? What's your style of dog?
Well, for me, mate, you know, everybody's different how they work sheep, but you know, I've spent the last 35 years trying to stop sheep from running away. You know, you see people work sheep here, and they got dogs up the tail end of sheep and woofing and barking and driving sheep along, and everybody's driving up something up the pressure. I tell you what, with my stock here, I need about 2 degrees of pressure and 98% of stop. You know, so a dog has got to be clean and got to get to the head hard. For me, they got to go hard. You'd like to see scratch and gravel when they take off. You know, they got to get there, and they got to cast nice and wide too. You know, I see all these dogs, and everybody says on all the posts you read, you know, oh, you know, my dog crosses and runs up there. Well, you cross in front of me, you won't cross twice, because what you'll do is hunt all the sheep as far away as they can, give them a start and get them going up the hills, and then you got to try and drag them out. So that's no good to me. So I like them to run out wide. I like them to get in front, pull them up. I like a bit of cover, and you know, they got to hold up. I mean, you're working wild sheep in the hills all the time. You know, you'll get around and cover them, and then they'll break out behind you, and then they'll break out behind you, and they'll break out behind you. So you got to keep working, and you got to keep working, and you got to keep sort of trying to keep them together. So, you know, they got to have a bit of try and all that sort of stuff. But you know, when you find one, Dan, tell me, because I'll have a twin to
it. and you mentioned there that you're 4-year-old half broken dogs. What if you had the time, mate? What would your ultimate training setup look like?
Well, I got one here, Dan. I just haven't spent any time in it. You know, like I got a little round yard here. You know, it's 1.5 meters high, and it's about what would it be, 25 meters across, I suppose, mate, just to give you enough room to.
The wild dogs out. 1.5.
Yeah. No, so they don't get out, mate. So they don't get out. So just to give me enough room to get away from them a little bit. I mean, Princey started off in the round yard. I try and keep him in there too, because sometimes I don't have, you know, real broke-in sheep here. I sort of decide I want to train a dog, so I'm going to get some sheep, and then I've got to break them in, you know. But I like to be able to sort of break them in there, and sometimes you take your puppy and you can't call it back and all those sort of things. So if you have it in the yard, you know, you can eventually get at them. But and then that yard opens up into a little arena paddock I've got. It might be 1.5 acres big or something, I suppose, and I got it fully fenced, and I've got 3 obstacles in there. So the only thing stopping me from training the dog is the number of hours I do it, Dan. You know, nothing wrong with the setup. No, it's get there eventually, mate. I've been saying it for 10 years. Somebody told me I worked a dog in 2015. Must have been quick, because I don't remember it.
While we're talking about that, another question from Rowan. He's asked, if you could get one old dog out of the freezer, who would it be?
Well, I suppose we're pretty impressionable in the day, you know, but when Princey first started and he trotted out with Clyde, I mean, he was a pretty fair dog, eh? You know, so I remember we're all St. George, would have been early 90s, and Ewan Carrigan was a judge from Gundawindi. You know, the unfortunate thing about a lot of these people I mentioned, you know, they're not with us anymore, you know, and Ewan's not there anymore, and Ewan was from Boomai, just out of Gundawindi there, and been in dog trials for a long time. And Princey walked out there with Clyde, and we'd never seen it before from the casting peg. There was no winding peg in those days. From the casting peg down to the gap, Princey backed Clyde all the way down the ground, and put the sheep through. And we'd never seen a dog with that sort of handle before, and get out in front of the sheep and back them off. And Princey was a master at it, and a lot of people are doing it nowadays. But you got to have the power to back it up, of course. But so, and then he went round and ran 100 with Clyde. So, and you know, then we went to the Supreme in 2001 at Roma, and you know, Princey was flying high then, and won the novice with Dodie. You know, he was the last son to die, and had nothing in the final. His last gun to fire was Clyde, and went out in the final, and I went out in the round and put Clyde in the final and turned around and won it. So yeah, if I could pull one out of the deep freeze, it'd be Clyde. Probably the worst thing happened with Clyde from about, I don't know, 4 or 5 year old dog onwards. He was infertile, so he didn't breed a lot.
Yeah, that's a shame.
Yeah, but I mean, Princey opened up the world for dogs a bit. Princey started sort of in the early 80s, and he was probably the first, let's say, I don't know whether this is the right word, but professional dog trialer as such, the one that committed to the sport 100% like that. I mean, Les Armstrong was a great hand as well, but Les was a little bit limited where he travelled and that sort of thing, but had tremendous dogs, the Alphadale dogs, and a lot of good handlers back in those days, but Princey made a job out of it, and I'm just trying to die here, and he came with his dogs.
Have some more of them. Don't do that to us.
And
don't stop talking.
He came on the scene then, and he gave a different outlook on dogs, different, and then went around and trained everybody how to do it, so he gave a lot back to the sport, got a lot out of it too, Princey, and gave a lot back to the sport as well. So anybody who was a dog trialer from the 90s and the 2000s, he was on top for a long time.
Mate, and just touching on that, like that would have been pretty special in its own. Like I'm imagining back in the day, a lot of people would have kept a lot to themselves and not wanted to pass on a lot of knowledge.
There was a lot of that going on, Dan. I mean, it was a different era back then, wasn't it? People, was more a world of learn from experience rather than getting told, so people, there was a lot of great people that imparted a lot of knowledge and were happy to impart the knowledge, but there certainly was, and even probably today, probably not to the same extent, but, we're closed books as such, and was more I learned it the hard way, so you can too, so, but, that's just the nature of the beast, isn't it?
In saying that, did you have any sort of mentors or close friends that you learn a lot off?
Well, when I first started, Alan Harriman, Alan's up here at Longreach, still retired here in town, and he was a keen dog person, trialled in the early 70s around Charleville then, and came back up, was mates with Tony Thomas, and ended up with a couple of dogs with Tony Thomas, and I ended up the overseer on the place with Alan when he was a manager, and he got me started into it. Alan won the triple at Blackall once with a bitch called Border View Kate, won the novice, the improver, in the open on the one day, which was a great effort. And so Alan sort of got me started into it, and got a couple of dogs, and bought a dog off John Mackay. John Mackay was just down the road here at Barcaldine, and he had some well-bred dogs. John was a cutting horse trainer, first person ever import a son of Spinifex into, had the first son of Spinifex in Australia. So he was keen on his dogs, and I got a pup off him and sort of got started from there. And then from then, probably the bloke that's had the most influence on me would be Trevor Percival, of course. Trevor's at Charleville there now, and had some country leased at Quilpie, and big hard block, 150,000 acres, all rough, hard mulga country. And Trevor used to come out there a couple of times a year, and we'd muster that country and spent a lot of time with Trev. And he's been a great mentor to me, and even today. Probably talk to Trev once a fortnight or something, and we're always talking dogs and stuff, and I love catching him up in the dog trials. He's been a tremendous mate to me for a long time, even though he's probably got about 30 years on me. He wouldn't like me saying that, but he's got about 30 years on me, and Dickie Knee's keeping Trev at bay at the moment, but don't worry, all through the 80s and the 90s, Trev's been a member of Queensland Association since 1966, and got life membership here a couple of years ago. He, his wife Anne, and well deserved. And all through the 80s and 90s there, Trev had a tremendous team of dogs, and as many as Dooney was winning, Trev was winning the same number. So so he's been a great rep for Queensland for a long time.
Mate, being a bit of a dog perf myself, and jockeys and pedigrees, you've rattled off a stack of collie pedigrees tonight. I'm assuming that you're a bit of a pedigree junkie yourself, and looking down the lines and seeing what's in what, and
who's
commonalities and who's done what with what. And would this be fairly accurate?
I'd say so, Dan. I mean, I was a registrar of Queensland for 12 years, so I've always been keen on it. So always keen on the pedigrees, and followed it all the way through. Sort of get a bit fanatical on the ones I like, but generally speaking, as a general rule of thumb, if you go to a dog trial and you see a dog that you like, I don't go to a lot of them these days, but, you go to some and you're looking at a dog and you think, I don't mind the style of that. And if you ask what its pedigree is, it'll have some Princey in it there somewhere, you sort of, as Trevor Purcell said to me once, he said, if you're breeding dogs, if you're working dogs for long enough, you'll end up if you're working dogs for long enough, you'll end up working your own prefix because you breed a dog that suits your style,
Yeah.
If your style's soft and gentle and touchy feely, well, that's the sort of dog you'll end up working, and you'll breed that dog because that's what you want. And if you like something that's boring in a little bit more power and everything else, that's the sort of dog you'll breed. So that's why at the end of the day, most people end up working their own prefix because they breed a dog that suits their style.
Absolutely.
Do you think you've achieved that?
Oh, I'm a long way off achieving anything, Laura, really. But put it this way, mate, if I don't like them, they don't stay here long.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Mm.
There's a question here from Bailey Knight. He's asked, what do you see, or what do you want as your legacy as Queensland president? So were you, just step back, a second, were you registered for 12 years and then straight into president?
No. I got out of Judy Allen was a registrar for a long time for us, and Rowan's taken it over in the last couple of years. I might have been registrar from like about 97 to 2010, something like that, 10, 11. And then Jude took over and did a great job for a long time, and now Rowan's taken it over. So, and then I had a spell off it, 2007. 2011, let's say, I had kids at boarding school and trying to make a living and doing all those sorts of things. And so I didn't do much dog trialing. I haven't done a lot of dog trialing full stop, really. Back in those days in the 80s and 90s, as I said, we were all working and trying to make a living and there was no money around. We all did the local ones here and used to try and get down to Tara because that was the Easter weekend. And so you had a long weekend then to get away and probably one or two others a year. And that was about it, whereas there's 23 trials in Queensland last year, and there was plenty of people that went to 21 of them. So there's a lot more opportunity to go to sheepdog trials now, and you just hook up your caravan and get on the bitumen, and you're there. Cars are.
Don't get in the way of a dog trial, do you?
That's it, Laura. That's it. As you turned around and just came back from John Darien, but the so people are a lot more mobile now, and it's a lot easier to get around. Lifestyles have all changed, of course, but and then I got back in to the committee probably, I was vice president there with Barry Knight there for a couple of years. I suppose it might have been about 19 or 20. I got back in, did the vice presidency with Barry, and then took on the presidency,
And on that question.
As for my legacy of presidency, I'm not dead sure what that's going to be. Probably pretty simple for me. I mean, dog trialing was here before we all came, and it'll be here after we've gone. So, if I in my time as president, I mean, I've just gone into my second year. If I, can keep the ball rolling and keep going in place what everybody's put in place before my time, and still keep dog trialing enjoyable and still keep the sport at its best, that'll do me.
And how do you think you go about that? Like, how do you go about keeping it at its best and keep it growing? And how do you keep the momentum flowing?
Dan, I don't think it's up to me too much, mate. We've got 140 or 50 members here in Queensland, and the members are doing more than I'll ever do. We've got, as I say, 23 trials here in Queensland. That means we've got 23 organising committees, mate. And trials don't happen without organising committees. So, you've got to be thankful for those members that put the time and effort in. It's a bugger of a job organising a trial. You've got to organise the ground, and these days you've got to hire sheep, so you've got to do all that. And in the early days, it was all donations and volunteers and all that sort of stuff. Well, you got to pay all the way now, and that's probably a thing that has changed. So nominations have gone up and prize money hasn't changed much. But that's just how sport is. If you're doing dog trialing for the money, you're in the wrong sport. Those organised committees could do much more for the sport than I'll ever do. But as president. So, it all starts there, mate. And, if you just keep a good environment, we've got some great members here in Queensland. Everybody's great. They're all contributing and they're all putting their foot forward for Queensland. So, that can only all well for the future, mate. We've got some young people coming into the sport now. I mean, here's Bailey asking questions. He, at his maiden Queensland representation there the other day down there in South Australia, and he went out there with Jim O'Connell, and Jim, of course, Australian president at the moment, but Jim went out for the 10th time, so that's the experience and the youth that we've got in Queensland, which we're grateful for. And through Dale Formosa and his Shawndale herding school there, who's been sort of turning people out. Unfortunately, Dale's health's let him down a little bit at the moment, but Dale sent a lot of members our way, and there's a lot of people got started in the dog trial. We started there with Dale at the Shawndale team, so we've got to be thankful for that, and hopefully it can just perpetuate along the way. You got good people in the sport. They encourage good people to come in, and the sport just keeps going forward from there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Bailey's asked another question. He said, where do you see the sport in 5 to 10 years' time?
Well, that won't be my problem. That'll be Bailey's, because he's only 23 and I'm 57. But I think I think for the sport, I think if we can keep the membership up where it is and keep people involved and keep encouraging people into the sport, some of the challenges the sport's going to be. A lot of our trials are down in the southeast of Queensland there, in that Alla Toowoomba Warwick country, And as the world expands and things move on, the availability of sheep is becoming harder and harder. So, there are obstacles that you've got to jump along the way. And, with us having 23 trials in Queensland, I mean, we've got some big runs, with that Western run, as we say, when we start there with Tara and Dalby. And there's a run there, really. There's Toowoomba, Tara, Dalby, Roma, Mitchell, Morven there with Joy and Charleville and Cunnamulla. I mean, there's a lot of trials in a row there. And then up the north here, we've got Barcaldine and Longreach. But the more trials you have, the more interest you create. And so it just, festers along like that by itself. So if you only had one every 3 months, people would lose interest. But when you've got a few going on, like fortunately we have at the moment, it just keeps the interest up. And sure, not everybody can attend every trial, but, it gives people the opportunity to set their holidays up and set their work style up so that they can attend a few dog trials. So, if we can keep that going forward and keep the number of trials, Alan Leachy is the Vice President of Queensland. Leachy's been a tremendous member to us up here. He just seems to pull sheep out of a hat, Leachy, and he gets trials going and gets them on the ground, and we're very thankful for Leachy for the work that he does for Queensland in that respect. So, so long as we can, 23 trials is a great year. That's one every second week nearly, so, we've got a lot of trials on it, and it keeps the interest up in the sport. And make no mistake, in 1986, when we brought in the Don Smith Memorial, which is we use that as our representative selection for the year, and at each trial, everybody who wins an Open gets 6 to the winner and 1 to the 6th place getter, and those points are added up together. And one of the main reasons that trophy was brought in was to encourage people to attend more trials. And make no mistake, chasing points certainly encourages people to attend more trials. And so from a Queensland point of view, the more people you get at a trial, the bigger the trial is, the bigger the prize pool is, the easier it is to run. I mean, you got to get more sheep, but you got more money for nominations and all that sort of stuff. So, if in 5 years' time, if we can be where we are, or and maintain the membership that we've got, and maintain the number of trials that we've got, I think we'll be in a good spot.
Absolutely. I mean, you mentioned some cracking Queensland towns there. I didn't realise Barcaldine had a trial. I'd nearly drive up there just for a pie from the bakery there. So going to the trial is even a better excuse.
Well, Dan, May next year, you do Roma, you do Barcaldine, you do Longreach, and then we'll turn you around. You can do Charleville and Cunnamulla, and you're heading for home.
Oh, yeah, mate. There's only one person you have to convince, and she's that way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, we cancelled Barcaldine and Longreach last year. But we'll certainly get them up and running this year.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And you mentioned a lot of trials there, and you said you hadn't got around to a few trials yourself, but you did mention
Strathalbyn.
That one there. And Tracy Lindsay has asked, mate, was there a dog that caught your eye at that particular trial?
At Strath at the Supreme.
Other than those good EK bred Kelpies.
Well, that's it, Laura. That's it. They were hard to beat. But yeah, down there. obviously, some of the best dogs in Australia were down there at the Supreme. Probably, I mean, Paul Darmody won it with Z3 Troy. What did I? Probably the dog, because I hadn't seen a lot of them. They're in South Australia. Those line of dogs that Anthony Ireland's got. I mean, Anthony's been on the top for a long time. I mean, I joke with Anthony. He had a dog back there called Clementsville Nitro, and so Anthony's been on the top for a fair while. And those Oak Dean dogs he works, I mean, Tom just worked one over there in New Zealand for Australia, and Anthony's got another one there. They're my style of dogs in respect that they get to the head clean, and they good quick covering dogs and hold sheep up, so they're the sort of things that I look for. But and those boys have got them under great control too, they get them around beautifully. But I thought the dog that Eileen Moriarty worked in the novice, won the novice, and then she turned around and won the improver with. I thought that was a nice little bitch, probably was a great little trial bitch, and she had it going beautifully, and she had the success with it. So she did well. The Canberra ladies cleaned up in the novice, didn't they? They ran 1, 2, 3. But, and a great little trial bitch. But for my job up here, probably, I probably just needed them with a little bit more urgency. But in saying that, it's horses for courses, isn't it, Dan? Like Eileen has only got a few sheep there, and she just works that dog on a few sheep, and it just sees the same sheep all the time she works, and she got under beautiful control and everything else, But, take it out of that environment where the sheep are banging around a little bit, and it's got to move a little bit quicker and got to get to the head a little bit harder and all those sort of things. It's the environment the dog's raised off, and because these dogs I've got here now, 20 years ago when I was mustering hard in this mulga country here, and dogs went everywhere with you. There's a few here that wouldn't have been about here 20 years ago. They haven't got enough guts. They just haven't got enough drive and enough go.
And it's funny you mentioned that and that dog and Eileen, because a litter sister, one of our clients actually had a litter sister of that bitch and was coming here for a while, and that bitch would make a proper work dog. Like she had go in her. And I was just like, and I knew nothing about her prefix then, and I always asked, sorry, who bred this again? And I actually ran into Eileen the week after the trial at Henty and got to talking about her, and it was great just to talk to her and talk about that bitch that I done a bit with, and that the litter sister, because I honestly believe that bitch that come here is a bitch who can take a work. Like she was just beautiful.
Yeah. No, Eileen's got that bitch going beautifully, and Dan, I mean, it's a perpetual argument. You see it on here all the time. People say, oh, trial dogs are no good for work and they won't do this and they won't do that. Well, I mean, everybody wants a 3 sheep trial. I'll be the one you take out in the mulga and get the sheep out of the hills, Well, sometimes it will be, but it won't be every day of the week, because you don't hear anybody complaining about the horse that won the Warwick Gold Cup last week. Might not be the horses you take to the Olympics to win the dressage with, but they're all worried about whether the dog you win the 3 sheep trials with is the one you're going to take mustering, I mean, they're two different environments. The environment that you have a dog in to win a 3 sheep trial, sure, you can do a bit of station work with them and give them a bit of experience and all that sort of stuff. But if you pull a dog off the day you finish shearing, if you pull it off and think you're going to take it out on Saturday and beat the quality and the depth of the competition that's about today, you might be disappointed. But if you took that same dog home and just backed it off for a week or 10 days and gave it a little bit of soft work and gave it a little bit of, off and out and in and, a little bit of, it could possibly win, and certainly a little bit of station work doesn't hurt dogs. It makes them think a little bit and makes them get a little bit tired, and it makes them, a bit more accountable for themselves and their actions, rather than tell them what to do every 5 minutes. But, people are constantly saying, trial dogs are no good for this and no good for that. It's the environment in which they're raised. Exactly what you just said there about Eileen's dog, if a dog only ever sees 3 sheep, how's it going to run around 3,000 the first time you take it there? So, I mean, it's just a perpetual argument that people go round and round, and they all want this trial where somebody goes and works 100 sheep and somebody does this and somebody does that. I mean, here we are flat out organising 3 sheep to get on the ground so somebody can go around them, and somebody wants to put, a trial on where you got to turn up with 3,000 sheep to get any nominations. I mean, I don't know why the argument keeps coming around all the time. I understand the argument, but if you look within the trial lines too, you know, look at those dogs of Anthony's and that dog of Tom's. I mean, Tom's got 30,000 sheep. I mean, that dog goes to work every day and it's just represent Australia. So, you know, where are we?
Well, and that comes off the back of what I was going to ask now. And let's call it cross codes, right? We're seeing a lot of cross codes. Like we're talking to a lot of cattle people who are having a crack at free sheep and into the yards.
Yeah.
Like, how do you see, well, obviously they've got a different style of dog to start with. How do you see the migration with those particular people and their team going into cross hopping? And I suppose, and now we're seeing trials where, you know, it's not unregular now to see 2 or 3, maybe 4 trials on the calendar year where you've got a 3 sheep or a paddock, a yard, and a cattle trial.
I think it's a great concept, mate. I think, you know, if you're looking for a dog to do everything and that's what you're after, I think it's a great concept for people, you know, but obviously a dog that needs to work cattle every day is going to have a little bit more front to him than a dog that sort of has to softly work 3 sheep every day, you know. So, but certainly you can back that dog off. But you know, if you think that dog's going to go and run 95 every day, you take him out. You know, he's probably not going to do that. But you know, when you come down to those trials, I mean, you're talking about that one at Geary and you know those ultimate stock dogs and those sort of things, which are great competitions, you know. But and put them all together, put all the attributes of the trial together, and you come up with a winner. Great idea for the all-round stock dog if that's what you want to do. But you know. And you blokes in New South Wales, you know, you work sheep a lot more extensively than we do up here in Queensland. You know, as I say, we don't do half the husbandry practices you blokes have to do down there. So you've got sheep in the yards all the time. And the other difference is your sheep are handled a lot, so they're quiet. So they need a lot more pressure to move, you know, whereas these sheep up here, they're half spooky all the time because, you know, they only see every now and again. And so when you get them in the yard and the dog goes bark, you know, they move, you know. Yeah. So, you know, it doesn't take so much pressure to move them. But certainly, you know, those new stock trials coming through that are more an all-round type of dog, I certainly watch them. Yeah, I think they're great. You know, I'm keen to see how it all goes. Whether that dog suits me, I'm not sure. You know, but certainly there's attributes of all of them. A good dog's a good dog in anybody's language, mate. Eh? You know, I mean, look at all those big old dogs from way back. You know.
And how about like the handler? How do you think that would change handlers? Like how to say it? They're going to have to be a lot more educated, and their stock handling skills are going to have to be altered and coming through. Like they're going to be picking up a lot more stuff, and it's only going to be better for their dogs in the long run as well, right? The way they handle the dog.
Well, I think so, mate. I mean, you know, it's only what you want to get out of the sport, isn't it? You know, like Catalana's reactionary, let's say, to sheep, and they're not as sensitive to movement as what sheep are. You know, so you probably. You know, your fine movement with a beast is probably doesn't need to be quite as precise as what it does with a sheep, you know. But in saying that, you know, these people are stockmen. You know, they'll get them around, mate. Eh? You know, and it's like, you know, if Laura wants to go camp drafting tomorrow and then next week she wants to do dressage, you know, she's either got to get, you know, a different style of horseman, or she's got to do something like that to get better at it. And if you want to excel at the other discipline, you just got to keep practicing. It's like if I wanted to go cattle dog trialing, I'd have to get a bit more tooth in mine. You know, they'll pull up 300 weaners coming out of the yard here, but they won't pull up something that wants to run all over something. You know, so you know, it's horses for courses, mate, isn't it? You know.
So I got a question there. You just said, you know, you go camp drafting one weekend, dressage the next, and most horse people say dressage is the basis of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe there's something like that with dogs? Like one of our disciplines is the base of everything, or not?
What do I think there, Laura? Probably.
Twice tonight.
Probably. Without sounding too biased about it, probably.
Because I'm going to agree with you, and I'll tell you why.
The finesse, probably, let's call it the soft movement and the settling of the stock and you know, the applying pressure and all that sort of stuff that you do in a sheepdog trial, probably, because the sheep is the ultimate most sensitive animal that we all work. Probably, if you've mastered that, you can probably go on to the next one. But in saying that, there's plenty of cattlemen out there that give, that work stock beautifully too. I mean, look at that Jamie Sturrock. Everywhere he goes, he wins, and Paul Rowe. I mean, they're dominant in the sport, aren't they? So, they've got to be doing something right. So, and their dogs have got to be going good. But, and as I said there before, Paul turned up the sheepdog trial and won that too. So, I think all the fundamentals are the same. We've all got to stop, we've all got to left, we've all got to right, and we've all got to forward in the back. So, and as Princey said, you only needed 5 commands to win the national. But mate, I think if you get all the basics right, I think at the end of the day, it only comes down to experience and what you want to do with them. Mate. Like, they'll just keep learning. You keep teaching them, they'll keep learning.
100%, man. And off the back of that, I remember I'm a good mate of Mick Hudson's, and I remember when I first went out and someone said to me, "Oh, we should go out and see Mick Hudson." And someone said to me, turned around and said, "Mate, you're a yard trialer. What do you want to go see a 3-sheep trialer for?" And I went, "Well, if he can do that out there, well, what can we do in the yards if he can do that outside?" And I remember when I turned around to Mick, and he said, "I actually wanted to encourage yard trial on the way to his place." And he goes, "Dan, congratulations today, but I can't teach you anything in the yards." And I said, "Mate, we've got to get him out of the paddock into the yards before we can work the yards." And he said, "Mate, we're going to get on fine." And all I've done is everything he's taught me outside and to read stock differently, I just applied in the yards.
Yeah.
No different, right? Stockmanship.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
So, mate, you can fly the 3-sheep flag 100% because to me, I still look at that. And while I love my yard trialing, I love utility trialing. But for me, 3-sheep trialing is one day where I want to get to, because I think that finesse of having that, being able to read stock like that and control your dog, I think that's a special connection there.
Yeah. I mean, it's not for everybody, but, and it all takes time. Probably the worst thing for 3-sheep trialing compared to, say, other sports that, let's use camp drafts as an example. It's a growth sport at the moment. I mean, they're just turning people away from nominations by the hundreds, But the difference being there, everybody can go and have a go at a camp draft. You can drag your horse out of the paddock on Thursday afternoon. You don't even have to pull the burrs out of his tail, and you don't even have to trim his mane. But you can go in there and you can cut one out and bring it to the front and go around the outside. And if you get him round, you get him round. And if you don't, you don't, and you still had a bit of fun for 40 seconds. But, for a sheepdog trial, if you have, for a 3-sheep trial, if you haven't got a little bit of handle on your dog and you haven't got a little bit of training on the dog and you haven't done a little bit of work prior to going to the competition, you can't even have fun, because when they run down there and run across and cast, they say thank you and you keep on going. So, if you smash up 3 sheep too bad, you got one in every corner, and it's a little bit hard, and that's good in respect that it raises the bar for people that do the sport, but it's when you're first starting off, it's hard to get started.
And speaking of, and you gave a plug to Dale for most of there a bit earlier in the short down team. Yep. What advice would you give to someone that wanted to get into 3-sheep trialing? Like, where do they start? How they go about it?
Well, this day and age, I mean, if you want to start into 3-sheep trialing now, there's a whole heap of people doing schools and stuff like that, and so there's plenty of opportunity to get a start somewhere. I mean, Mick's got his online stuff, and Jamie Sturrock's got online stuff, and you see him on Facebook all the time. There's people asking questions all the time. So, there's a whole heap of places to start like that. I don't think I've met a dog trialer yet that if somebody rang up and said, "Can I come down and work some sheep with you?" they'd say no. So I mean, we all have fun working sheep with other people, and it gives you a little bit more enthusiasm. You get sick of doing it by yourself all the time. So. I mean, there's plenty of options to start. I mean, and everybody starts off with their own little dog that they like, and whether it's suited to, that style of work or not, you've got to get them started to see, but, mate, there's plenty of opportunity these days if you want to come into the sport. I mean, I see Victoria had one the other day, great attendance, had 30 odd people there. They had 3-4 round yards going down there. I was talking to Connor, they had a great day down there. And up here in Queensland, we have plenty of training days. We have those short courses as well, which are sort of in a more confined space, say an area approximately as big as a tennis court sort of thing, with a course around the outside stuck against the fence. So, if you've got anything on your dog at all and the sheep are broken, you can sort of get them around and have a little bit of fun and get started and talk to like-minded people and pick up a few tips along the way. And, Denise Hoare there at Caden Working Dog, she has dog schools there in at her place there at Warwick on behalf of the Queensland Association as well. So there's plenty of opportunities out there if you have a look.
Do those short course events fall under your jurisdiction within the Three Sheep as well?
Yeah, they do, mate. Yeah, we supply the
They're
insurance.
fantastic. I'd love to see more of them. I reckon they're a great thing.
They're a great starter for people looking to get into the sport because you can have some fun there. You can go around and complete the course and you can have some fun and talk to like-minded people and it's a great stepping stone, mate. It's been great to our Three Sheep trialling here in Queensland, and thankfully, as I say, we're only as good as the committees that organise things, and we've got some great people there organising those short courses. I think we have 5 or 6 short courses a year, so that's a great thing.
And you don't have to take 6 days off either.
No, exactly right, mate. Exactly right. It's Saturday, Sunday, and you go home.
Yeah. I reckon they're great. I'd love to see more of them. I'd love to see them in our state.
Yeah.
So how do you think what Jacko likes in a dog today changes in 10 years, or does it?
Well, mate, if I'm still working a few sheep, which I might have to be because there's no one here to replace me at this stage, but the probably won't change much, mate. I probably just might wind the throttle back a little bit, and probably not have as hard to go on dogs, But I make them like that a bit too, mate, because I like them travelling out, I like them getting there, I like them being in front blocking something up because that means I haven't got to get around there and do it. So, I'll always need that strong heading dog for my job, and on the trial ground, it'll probably let me down somewhere. There's a whole heap of sheep out there. If you get around in front and block them up too much and you come around behind, you can't move them, So you got to have the power to go on to move them. So, and there's a lot of sheep that, haven't had a lot of handle and don't like getting annoyed around the head a lot, So, it's horses for courses. And as one of our better trialers, Jeff Gibson, he's got a style that he works sheep with and he works sheep from behind. He just touches the head enough to keep him in control and then he works them from behind. So, I've probably, Dan, what I need to do, mate, is I need to get some dogs broke in. I need to go dog trial, and in 12 months' time, I'll tell you what I need to do to my dogs to make them better.
And speaking of, mate, have you got a most memorable trialing moment or achievement?
Not really, mate. I haven't set any world records or anything. I've just had a lot of fun over the years, attended a lot of trials up here, won a few on and off, but not many. And, but met some tremendous people, mate, within the sport, all like-minded people that just love dogs and love working sheep. And mate, it's been a tremendous 35 years to me. Probably about the only regret I said as I put up a post last year when I went to Canberra for the first time. It's been 33 years since I've been to Canberra. Don't make the same mistake that I made, and it's the same with the Supreme. I went to my first Supreme. I went to one in Warwick actually in 2001, but in Roma in 2001. But went to the one at Hawkesbury, which is a tremendous one that those girls ran down there. And I said, been a long time since I've been to Supreme. I'm not going to miss another one. So, I went to Hawkesbury and I went to Dalby, and then we had a bit of a spell and went to Campbelltown and went to Strathern. I'll be at Geelong next year. I got the motel booked.
How far have you been travelling for dog trials? Is Tassie the furthest?
Yeah. Went down there to Tassie, had a bit of look. It was great too, the committee down there did a great job running the Supreme, and Australia brought home the Waylego, so that was all a good thing. And we had a great run down there in Tasmania. Never been to that country either, so it was all a bit of a novelty to me.
That country. What about a trip over the ditch?
Well, I was threatening to go this year, busting to go really, but I just got a bit too dry and, just lost a bit of enthusiasm along the way. Everybody knows with your place, when you're doing something every day, you don't need to do a lot every day to keep up, but you don't do something for a week, you sort of get a long way behind, So, so just a bit dry. Lost a bit of enthusiasm towards the end, which was unfortunate. I threatened to go last time and I didn't go. I threatened to go this time and didn't go. If I don't go, surely I'll be dead. So I'll have to go at some stage.
How do you see the sport bringing more young people into it?
Yeah, hard one, Laura. It's Well, we're probably a little bit lucky in Queensland here in that, through some of the programs that have been in place, we've got a lot of people under 35-year-old competing in the sport. We've probably got 15, 20 members here, competing reasonably regularly that are under sort of 35. So that's a good position to be. The unfortunate thing with the sport, as I say, it takes an element of training to get the dog to the standard that can get on the ground and you can have a little bit of fun with them. And then, most trials start on a Friday because nomination day and a lot of people are going to go to work. I mean, we can all tick the box that each state's got a system, you can tick the box, you don't have to turn up till Saturday or Sunday. But all those things just sort of make life a little bit complicated. And don't worry, most people that have gone dog trialing have 15 or 20 years off in the middle trying to make a living and raise a family, because it is a big commitment to stay committed to the sport. And then, later on in life, it's sort of 50, 60 or so people come back to the sport and pick it up and away they go. Because here we are, you were down there with us, Laura. We went to Strathalbyn. We turned up there on the Friday and didn't leave the following Sunday. So, there's a week of your life you don't get back, isn't it? So,
Especially when you're hanging out with you.
Well, that's it, yeah. But no, we had a lot of fun down there. It was a great event organised by Stefan and Simone, the team down there. Well, we had a tremendous week, and as it will be in Geelong next year with
Definitely.
Barry and Connor. But no, so yeah, anybody who wants to get involved in the sport, certainly here in Queensland, give us a ring. I mean, we're scattered all over the state. Mick Rigby and I are up here in this country up here, and Jim O'Connell was up here for a long time, and Jim's down that Tara country down there with Leachy now. And so, we're scattered in most parts of southeast Queensland there, and Rowan Ballins there in Roma. Caleb Wally's up there as well as Surat. So, we've got plenty of members all over Queensland. So anybody who's interested and wants to get on to us, for sure, give us a ring. Talk to anybody about dogs all day.
Do you think maybe that short courses are a short-term resolution for that?
I think so, mate. I think so, probably. Certainly give people a start and find out what they need on their dogs. I mean, the difference from a sheepdog trial, one of the major differences, obviously, is you've got to teach your dog to work off balance. I mean, the dogs will bring the sheep to you all day, but at some stage you've got to step aside and make them drive them past, and take them forward. So, and unless someone shows you that and until you learn or whatever, it's a little bit hard to pick up. But certainly the short course, you're standing the course and you've got to put the sheep through it. It's just a nice soft way to learn.
What's the best advice you've ever been given?
I was about to say that.
What's the best advice you've ever been given by a dog handler? On the course, off the course, trialer, not a trialer, I don't care. What's the best?
Probably, I mean, it's not so much a dog trialing thing, but just an animal training thing in general. A good mate of mine, Damien Kerr, who's a tremendous horseman and a keen dog person too, and he had those shows going there 30 years ago, and put on a great display, and he was a great exponent of Ray Hunt, a horseman over in America that came over here and sort of opened the eyes up on a lot of us. And he said just see how little it takes to get the job done, and that's probably not a bad policy. You don't need the 6-foot stick. We've all heard the stories about I got to give him a hiding before I start, otherwise he doesn't listen to me. Well, I don't have dogs like that, because if they don't want to listen to me, I don't want to work them. So just see how little it takes to get the job done. I mean, a lot of people when they start off, they start at number 10. But if you start, say for discipline, you start at number 1, you got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 before you have to go, to the extreme. So, the softer you can keep things and the smoother and everything you can keep them is probably, better. I don't like yelling at things. If I got to talk to them much louder than this, I get sick of it.
Yeah. No, that's great advice, mate. It is. And I'm hoping there's even people out there now listening back to this that are already maybe at like a 7 or 8 or a 9, maybe even a 10, and they maybe reconsider where they're at and maybe dial back down a bit.
Well, it's the old adage, isn't it, mate? I mean, it's been around for as long as I've been around. The harder you are, the harder they get, So, as Princey used to always say, there's only one instinct in a dog stronger than work, and that's survival, So if you want to take it that far, you lose everything. So, yeah. So, I mean, but it's the nature of the beast. Some people are loud, boisterous type people, and that's how they work their dogs. And that's why I say, if you work dogs for long enough, you'll work your own prefix, because you'll breed a dog that works like that.
That's right. You start to galvanise those dogs too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely, mate. And you mentioned earlier that there's no one to take over from you at present, mate. What advice would you give to someone that wanted a career?
His son works with him.
Yeah, no, but he said he's not going to trial. He said because there's no one to take over from him there.
Oh,
But
no.
as a person that wanted to get into the agricultural industry or get into being a jackaroo, what advice would you give them these days? So things have changed a little bit over the last, we're now 2023, 35 years, right?
Yeah, mate. Well, I'm a little bit lucky, Dan, because I have got a boy who's come home here. You know, I've only got one, and fortunately, he's chose to be in the bush. He spent the last 5 or 6 years down there in New South Wales, and had a great grounding. I'll give him a bit of a plug, but Ejulabra there, Merino stud there at Warren, run by Cam Munro. Cam's known Cam for a long time. He's a jackaroo with me. So, you know, they've got a great program going down there, and they started a lot of young fellas into the industry down there, and Carl went down there and had a lot of fun down there, and went on, worked with another place down there with Gordon Welsh and had a lot of fun. And Gordon also owned some country near us up here. So he came from New South Wales up here and worked for Gordon. And then he's sort of a little bit Gordon and a little bit me now. So that's all good for me because I'm wearing out. But but mate, anybody who wants to start in the agricultural industry now, I mean, the world's your oyster. I mean, you can start anywhere. There's that many opportunities in the bush now. It doesn't matter, you know, whether you want to go up in the north and do a bit of horse and cattle work up there, or you want to work on sheep, or you want to be a shearer, or you want to be a fencer, or you want to be anything involved in the industry. It all comes down to hard work now, doesn't it? You know, you only got to work harder than the bloke next door and you'll be a success, you know. So, mate, anybody who wants to make it in the bush, yeah, as I say, there's that many opportunities out there now. It doesn't matter. I mean, we're all short-staffed and you know, you can do whatever you like in the bush, you know, and it's a great stepping stone. Even if you only stay 3 or 4 years in the bush, I mean, you have great fun, you meet a lot of great people, and you work hard and you learn how to work, which is probably one of the most important things to learn. You know,
100%. I was just going to touch on learn some work ethic.
Yeah, you know, I mean, it's okay. You know, you've got to get out of bed when you don't want to, and you got to work later than you don't want to sometimes. And, you know, it's a bit hotter than you want it to be, and it's a bit colder than you want it to be, and it's a bit wetter some days. So, you know, you got to put up with all that. And, but at the end of the day, mate, it's been a great life to me. I come up here with nothing and still haven't got much, but not worried where my next feed's coming from. So that's a good change.
Absolutely. Mate, is there anyone you'd like us to sit down and have a chat with on Dog Talk that you'd like to hear from?
Well, mate, what I'm going to do now, because speaking with Laura down there at South Australia, I mean, there's some great people and so many better people with dogs than me. But the hardest thing is to get them to come on, Laura. So
you're telling me.
Surely you can work that.
What I'm going to actively do is actively seek some Queenslanders to come on. So we got nothing on now until Stanthorpe at the end of January. But I'll certainly be working away. We've got some tremendous handlers here in Queensland that are, you know, 6 and 8 and 10 times Australian reps, you know. So it's a fun thing, and I think you blokes are doing a great thing for the working dog industry. I mean, that magazine you do, Laura, is fantastic. You know, it's great reading. We'll wait for it to come out, and we all read it from cover to cover. And I noticed they gave it to the New Zealanders in the gift pack the other day when they gave it to them over there in New Zealand. So that was a great thing for you. And so I think you blokes are doing a great service to the working dog industry as such. You know, I mean, it's grown a new leg, the dog industry, hasn't it? You know, we've got dogs making 20 and 30 grand where, you know, you used to be buying pups for $100 once, and that was a dear one, you know. So, you know, and plenty of pups making $800, $1,000 now, starting money, and so it should be, you know, for the time and effort it takes to raise a pup and the breeding and the effort that goes into them. But so the more we can do for dogs, and the more we can put it out there for people, you know, the better off the industry will be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actively seek some more Queenslanders to come on.
Thank you.
Much appreciated.
It took you being number 100 to get you on board. But
yeah, I've been waiting a while, Laura, but I'm not one for self-promotion at all. And so I like to hold in the mulga a little bit rather than be out in the front. So, but it's been great talking to you. And after speaking to you down there at South Australia and the job you do, it's my pleasure to be on for you, really.
Thank you. Thank you for jumping on it. Yeah.
And we appreciate the plug, mate. But I just want to put a shout out there. Yes, it is episode 100, but without the push of Miss Mary McKillop, this would never have Marie McKillop, otherwise known as Mary. This would never have taken place. So, Marie, if you're probably sick of hearing mine and Laura's dribble for so long now, but if you do happen to listen to this, thank you very much for giving us that push you did a couple of years ago. And you just thanked us for this. Well, everyone can actually thank Marie because it was her that actually pushed us to do this for so long. And I just wanted to give a cheerio out there for her on this number 100 episode.
It's not just Mum, it's people like you, Jacko, that jump on board and, week after week and fortnight after fortnight. It's, 2.5 years now. So thank you. Without you guys, there's nothing.
Well, you've had some great people on here. I mean, you've had some of the best handlers in the country on here. So, anybody that's interested in dogs, if and made it as simple as if you like the person that's on, you tune in, you listen, and if the person that you're on there's not your style, well, you don't listen. So, we've all got that option, haven't we?
100%.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mate, was there a question tonight that stood out to you and they will win a bag of Enduro Hindy food for what are you laughing about? Hindy food with Rookie Roommate.
Right. Well, I'm not going to give it to Barley Knight, so that's easy. I'll give it to Rowan Ballon. That's one of my little jokes, really, to talk about getting dogs out of the deep freeze. I said it when Darmody won the Supreme down there, and I wrote a little spiel on Facebook. I said we can put Digger back in the deep freeze. Now, Winella Digger was a dog that Paul Darmody represented Australia a couple of times with, and we all joke about it. Stefan Cross would like to get Connie back out of the deep freeze. Jim O'Connor would like to get Lefty out. So it's a bit of a joke going around. So we'll give it to Rowan for his. And if I could pull Princess Clyde out, I'd have another look at him.
Beautiful. Well, Rowan, get in contact and we'll get the bag of Enduro off to you.
And also one coming your way, Jacko, for being on tonight. So we very much appreciate your time and effort of logging on.
It's been a pleasure.
You're not getting away that easy.
Oh, okay.
Would you rather fight one duck the size of a horse or 20 horses the size of ducks?
That's a hard one, Laura. But what am I going to do, Laura? I'm not as good as I once was, but I'm as good once as I ever was. So
I love that song.
I'll pull on the horse the size of a duck. I mightn't come out in front, but I'll come out swinging.
I love that because I love that song. That's one of my favorite. Jacko, once again, thank you very much for getting on tonight, mate. We really appreciate it. And to everyone listening back or watching live or listening back, thank you very much for logging on. And please remember, we learn every day, and the day we stop learning will be a sad one for all of us.
Thank you.
Cheers, mate.